All right, I'm running just a little bit behind what I intended to do, but I'm back. And with luck, we are going to finish our Bodacious Bunny today. Don't know if anybody caught it last time, but essentially, I am making a busty bunny wizard. Depending on how far I make it today, because it takes a little bit of time to do pretty much everything, I might be working on the wizard hat, cloak, giving it some, giving it glasses. There we go. It's kind of got to put together a few parts. I'm kind of looking to see what else I have left here. Feet. These are going to be mammaries. That's right. I chose the word mammary instead of any of the other words I could use. Just got to make sure I've got all my parts. There we go. So this is the combination of colors I'm using. A little bit of galaxy, a little bit of purple. I think it looks really cute. I think the next one I do, I can adjust a little bit on I use. Since this galaxy print material actually is a little bit more expensive, I can probably do the main color on the back end of like my feet. Because if you look here, let's see, I've got my foot. Where's my foot? So if I just did like the galaxy here and then just purple or black or whatever on the back, I can at least save some of this galaxy material. So that's good to know for the future. What I have to do is this material is just stretchy enough and just fuzzy enough that if I do not pin larger pieces together, it starts to kind of stretch on one side but not the other, and it'll just come out uneven. So I am basically just pinning this together so that I can do my best to keep it all lined up nicely. I don't have to do this for everything I sew. There's a lot of small pieces that I can't do this for. For example, when I do a mouse, which, you know what, since I am just starting this video, I'm going to go ahead and go grab a mouse real quick. And these are what I'm talking about. So I make mice and bunnies now. And these are so small that I really cannot use pins to hold it in place, except for on the body itself. So like when I put the heads together, I just have to be careful and kind of put it together slowly. I've got a whole setup for it. I'm going to have some instructions very soon for anyone who's interested in learning how to make those. Since I made my own design, I don't have like instructions written down. Instead, I just memorize the order I do things. I just have a pattern for it. So it's kind of hard to think along the lines of having to instruct people by paperwork. If I was standing over someone, I can just kind of walk you through the steps one at a time. And I've got several live videos where I do that essentially. So I'm trying to figure out how to save those. I'm probably going to open up like a YouTube page or some other social media that lets me save really long videos, because it takes about an hour and a half to build one. And that's not even counting cutting it out. Of course, cutting it out's the easy part. I can just make instructions for that. But today I am making a busty bunny. This was a custom request from somebody. So I made this completely from scratch. There was an image that we were using to reference, but I think that it's generic enough where I don't feel any kind of twang of remorse or guilt for utilizing it for other plushes as well. So this is going to wind up being a wizard plush busty bunny. Here's the colors that I'm using. I think that the purple looks really good on this galaxy print. And the galaxy print has a lot of different changes to it. So there's a range of colors, which is both good and bad. It's kind of unfortunate because, like, for example, if this was all just this darker material, that mouse would look a little bit better. But right now, it just kind of, that seems odd to me in a little way, but not bad. It's probably going to wind up being the same thing with the mammaries where they look a little bit off because they don't have the exact same pattern to them. Here is one of my thighs. I don't know if you can see this right here, but there is a little triangle. That is the end of the two pieces. What happens is between these two triangles right here, I'm going to leave it open because that's where I'm going to attach the feet. So once again, I'm going to pin this in place. Now, since the thighs and the feet are going to be hand stitched on, because I have not developed this pattern far enough to have everything sewn on by machine, I'm also going to leave a section of it open right here at the back so I can stuff it, which is the same thing that I had done when I made this thigh the other day. So I got this opening right here. I can inside it out once I get the foot attached, and I don't have to worry about unstitching or cutting or anything like that. If this was just going to be sewn together where there was no seams, I would actually fill it the same way, all in one piece with the head. And my intention is to consider whether or not I want to do that. So depending on how popular this pattern is, I might wind up deciding to set it so that basically I'll have a hole right here, whatever shape it fits best with. And then on the side of the body, I won't have to hand stitch it right here. I'll just make another hole here so that they line up as one solid piece. Now, when I make these patterns, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly how I want to put these things together. And the reason for that is because when you do the fabrics, when you actually stuff the material, it stretches. Now, of course, that seems obvious because it is fabric. But what winds up happening is you're trying to make a 3D object out of a very stretchy 2D object. And it's not like with wood or metal where they're just going to hold their shape no matter what you do to the inside of them. Because what winds up happening is these really change shape so much. I have to find a better place to put my pins. I put them in with my right hand, take them out with my left hand, so I'm reaching back and forth because between my hands right here is where I actually have my camera. All right, now I'm going to leave a space from here to here. Yes, it's going to pull the thread along as well, but that's not a problem. That is where I'm going to stuff the fluff inside there. And again, this is the thigh of it. Eventually I may make some other adjustments and tweaks. When I first started making the mice, it used to take me about 4 hours to sew a mouse. That's roughly 4 hours to make a single one of these guys when I first started making this. And over time, I learned all these little things. I made the back of the head bigger so that it would fit in. I made the arms and the legs different shapes, did all these different steps to make things easier. And that's probably what's going to wind up happening here. I've got so many little things that I want to make better over time that I have to figure out what is the best route. For example, there's a possibility what I'm going to start doing is putting the ears in after I build the face so that I can have ears facing upward. But I don't think that the outward is a problem, especially when you get the rest of the body put together. And I know that this has kind of a snouty face to it, but when I put the hole here where I put the neck in, it actually will expand the face out from the bottom because it's going to stretch there. Making a big mouse. No, actually today I am making a bunny, a busty bunny. This one it's not completed because the person who was ordering it, they weren't sure if they were going to complete it. So it will look different once these are sewn in place. And when I make this one, it's going to be like that. And I'm actually going to be using the galaxy material for the mammary area. Sunny. That's funny. So in the end, my intention is once I get this whole bunny put together, I'm actually going to turn it into a wizard bunny. A busty wizard lass. I'm going to try and give her glasses. I'm going to decide what kind of safety pin or safety eyes or nose to put in there. And I'm going to use some galaxy print to make the cloak and hat. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. When we get to that far, if I am lucky, I'll be able to do it today. But I'm going to have to pick up my son in about, an hour and a half. So I may not get it done, but I'm going to work as quickly as I can, as efficiently as I can. The next thing I'm going to do after I inside out these feet, what I like to do to give them some shape, just like I did with the ears and the other foot, is I will put fluff and stuff on the inside, and then I will stitch a certain shape in there. For the ears, it gives it a little bit of shape so it doesn't just hang floppy. And it also creates this little recess so it looks like the inside of the ear is its own separate thing. I think little details like that make me feel like the whole thing comes to life a little bit. Yes, it does look a little bit like a donkey. That is exactly why I keep bringing that up. When I sew the head on, the neck's going to stretch out just a little bit. See how much of a difference that makes on the shape of the head when the neck is not as narrow? It's such a different shape when I do that. No, it does. It 100% looks like a donkey exactly like this. And if I were to hand stitch it on, that's exactly where it would land. I'm absolutely sure. And I mentioned that the other day when I was on live and I made this part. I was trying to reassure them that I'm absolutely positive that it'll land looking like I want it to land. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a little bit of fluff in the toes. I've got more fluff than I need, but this just a little bit is enough to give it some shape. And then when I stitch the toes in there, you can see how they kind of came out. It actually gives it the shape that I want it to have. I think my dog wants outside. I'll be right back and let him out, otherwise he's going to get upset. Come on, go on. There we go. Fortunately, the weather is nice, and I can just leave the doors open, and he can go in and out as he wants. Okay, now, do the toes. My hope is that this will actually be the best end. When I sewed this, this was the top, and this is the bottom. And the relevance is, if you look at the dark material, the darker it is, the harder it is to see the shape. And unfortunately, I did not super plan where the material landed on each piece, which I usually do for patterned materials. As an example, you can see how the stripes, I planned the loop on its belly to match so it hides. So I'm usually pretty good about planning that. I just did not realize this galaxy print had such a vast difference that it was something that I should have been paying attention to. Okay. And then I will do that again. There is a little bit of thread that's going to come out with it. That is not a problem. I think I want to put just a little bit more fluff in there. The way it looks like it's moving is that there's not enough fluff to thicken it up. So I'm going to stuff just a little bit extra. And if one toe is a little bit bigger than the others, then that's totally okay. Just got to make sure I get it all the way stuffed into the foot. This is something I started doing pretty early on. I realized that by giving some plushes a little bit of shape, it makes things a lot better than having to round out each corner. For example, when I round out the back of the thigh, I just cut these little V's into it, and they're arched V's, so they're shaped like this instead of straight. And what happens is when they sew together, they round, and it gives it a bulk shape to it. The problem is that when you do it on something super small, like a toe, it makes a whole lot of weird stitches, and there would be points on it that are just not worth messing with. All right, so I'm going to cut my little excess off, and we're going to stitch this together. That way it just doesn't annoy me later. And now I can start working on how I'm going to sew my foot on. Using my previous one as a reference, which, again, this is relatively new. I made this pattern. I sent out the prototypes. So I'm still kind of learning. Now it looks like I've got, if you look really close, you can see there's the stitch here. That's where I'm going to put this at the back. So what, you must do it all the time? Let's see. How you love animals in different colors and galaxies or stars. I'm not good at English. Okay, so yes, this guy does look a lot like Beetlejuice. I love the color schemes to it. He was a special request from somebody. They wanted an employee mouse. I have to send this out soon. And do it all the time. I'm not sure what you mean by do it all the time. So what you must do it all the time as a guest. So basically, if you're talking about the stitches or whatever it is, you'll have to let me know what specifically you're asking about. All right, so this is my back. So that means I want my foot facing forward. I'm going to center this, and I'm going to use the pins again. Sewing on the inside of a curve is kind of annoying when it's not a full circle. I know that at any point in time, I might off-center it, and then one piece will go one direction, another piece will go another. And it is a pain in the butt, but sometimes it's the best route that I've got. And until I have mastered this pattern, made all the little adjustments that I need, I'm still learning piece by piece. The stitches, I meant them. Let's see, what stitches could you mean? Are you talking about for the foot, the ones that I did here? Those I don't always do. I do them whenever I want a certain thickness and a certain design. Like for right here, I got this, the ear was stuffed before I put that in there. So it depends on what kind of look I'm going for. So I'm not sure if that's the question you're asking. I understand that you said that there's a little bit of a language issue. I will do my best to answer, and if I answer incorrectly, please feel free to correct me. With the belly in the round head, I don't know if it's a belly or head or belly. Belly with a round head. So do you potentially mean this kind of stitch where I've rounded out the body? Or are you talking about maybe at the bottom? So this is the head. My belly is going to come up too. It's going to have one of those stitches as well, where I use it to round out the belly. Yes, so it depends on the shape. For example, I needed to get a rounded face. I could have easily just made one piece here and then sewn them together. Let's see if I show you this. It's hard to tell, but there's a rounded face here and there's none of these kinds of stitches. I don't have anything that rounds it out like this. Instead, it's all the shape in the top. It's basically three pieces. I got a bottom, and a top. And then I put one on the back, so it's almost like building a cone. So it really just depends on what shapes I'm going for, and the truth of the matter is I kind of just have to do it. And when I'm learning to make a new pattern, when I am designing a new pattern, not only do I have to learn how to do it, but I have to do it like 10 times until I get it to work just right. All right, so doing the inside here, this is going to be the top of the foot connected to the thigh. Doing just a little bit across the top, and I'll show you why. The problem becomes that when you do certain stitches, certain shapes combined, you have to find out a workaround a lot of times. Oops, let me make sure I don't cut my... There we go. And cut these off. I don't even like using the shearing to cut this off because I'm always afraid that I'm going to cut the material. I'm trying to get it as close as I possibly can to where the thread and the material match. So I dig in and just use the sharpness of it. And once again, you can see toes. Oh, it is. It really is hard to make plushes. I might have a couple videos that show that even for the simple designs, like my snails, I had to make it so many times. So there's so many different prototypes and so many different shapes. And sometimes it's a big change. Sometimes it's just a bunch of little changes. But I assure you, it's just shy of something I would call fun. I love doing it because I love creating new things. But at the same time, I couldn't guarantee that fun was the right word to describe how to make a plush. All right, again, I'm doing the same process over and over again. That's because I've got a left and a right. I'm making plushies with my own hands, but not with this machine. Oh, you know what? To tell the truth, aside from the fact that the machine gives you a good solid stitch that's probably a little bit more secure, I have found that making a plush by hand is a little bit easier. I adjust all my patterns so that I can use a machine, because that's the goal, to make it as easy for the final version to repeat it. But when you are doing it by hand, you got so much more control over everything. And you can kind of change the shape as you go without having to readjust the pattern itself. So definitely keep doing that. And what will happen is eventually you'll find ways to get faster and better at it. And I'll bet one day you'll kind of make some and be like, you know what? It's time for me to start using the machine more often. I'm pretty good at this. I can figure out how to use the machine in comparison too. And then you'll just have to adjust some of your patterns, because in some circumstances, your machine is not going to be as giving, and you'll realize, oh, okay, I can just kind of change this shape a little bit. And when you do, you'll find it a little bit faster. For example, what I'm doing right now is something that I never would have done originally. This all would have been hand stitched, because I'm sewing two curved pieces together. And when I was first learning how to sew, this was just, there was no chance at me being able to get this right. And then and in addition to that, once I started transitioning to machine sewing these parts, the first thing that I used to do, here, let me go ahead and get this piece out so I can show you. I would just do a simple running stitch along this whole thing, so that it would basically, like a running stitch right along here, so that it would stay in place. Eventually I got good enough where I realized that I can, oh no, that's so stupid. I'm going to have to fix this. So yes, I made a huge mistake, but it was still easier than it would have been originally when I was doing the running stitch. I actually just sewed the wrong sides together. And now, like an idiot, I think I did it on both of these. Yep, I did. I messed up on both of them. So silly. All right, I'm going to show you what I did. I just sewed my outside to my inside. They are all supposed to be material to material, outside to outside. And now I've got to go through the whole process of unstitching this, because I am a complete idiot, and there is no way to do that any faster. Even if I were to just give this up real quick and then cut up two more, it's going to take me just about as long as it's going to take for me to unstitch it. Now, I'm a little bit lucky that the inside of this material is white and the thread that I'm using is black, but my stitches are still a little bit close. So I'm kind of having to be very careful and trying not to break anything that's going to be important. Man, that sucks so hard. I know that making mistakes happens. And I understand fully that that's one of those things that there's nothing that can be done about it except moving on. But it also feels a little bit extra stupid because I'm doing it in front of people while I'm trying to make this as quick as I can. So essentially, I just undid any chance I had at being quick. And I still have to be very careful not to tear anything because I don't want to lose this material. Plushes are definitely weird. You have the benefit of being able to do exactly what you want. You don't have to worry about, for example, if you're doing clothes for somebody, you don't have to worry about if it fits and different body types and stuff like that. But you still have all these little things that you have to pay attention to. And in this case, I just completely messed up. So now I'm hoping I can seam rip it pretty quickly. If you're wondering why I'm not just running the seam ripper right across, it's something that can work. Let me try it real quick. But because this material is so soft, you stab right through it really easily. So maybe I can do it slowly without ripping my materials. It's really hard to tell what's going to wind up happening. And in fact, I think what I'm going to wind up doing instead is coming back to this part later, if I have time. Once again, I meant to sew the outside to the outside, and that's just not what I did. It's very silly that I messed that up, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put together the head to the body. So what I'm going to set up is line all this up. Again, I have to make sure that when I sew this together, I have an opening so that I can stuff them together. In this case, there's going to be a few differences in how it comes together in the end. Normally, if I were to perfect this pattern, I would actually have a section of the neck right here that would have a circle cut out. And then the head would have a circle on the bottom of it. And what would happen is I would basically just be able to sew everything together and just have one opening here so that I could stuff the whole thing. Well, a few different changes here and there until I have mastered how I want this to look. I'm doing this a little bit backwards. I'm actually going to go ahead and sew this together. I'm going to leave the opening like I was going to stuff it normally, but I'm going to put that a little bit further down the back to get it away from the neck. And then when I put it together, I'm going to attach and decide where I want the head to be and cut it open there. I'm adding all these pins because this material is very soft, a little bit stretchy, and if I don't put the pins in there, what will wind up happening is some of the material will stretch just enough to kind of ruin the whole thing. Additionally, I'm not starting at that corner. I'm going to do another piece and I'm going to run off the corner, much like I'm doing here in this direction. In just a second, and get everything lined up. A little bit lower, and then that's going to be the end of one side of my closing stitch. And here's the other end. Doesn't need much, just enough for you to be able to put the fluff inside. And in truth, you could probably fit that into something about the same size as a nickel. But if it's too small, it becomes harder to fill because you got to push your fingers into it or use just a small end of a chopstick to get it in there. And the harder you make it on yourself, the worse it is. And a closing stitch is not very hard to do. So I prefer to do a little bit of a longer closing stitch rather than have to make a teeny tiny little opening. And if you have trouble hiding your opening, it's definitely not a bad thing to make a tiny opening and just kind of do the extra work for the stuffing. When I make giant snakes, I actually leave multiple openings because I don't want to have to push like one little bit of fluff for 3 feet when I can just do it for a couple feet in each direction and then start at the next opening. Go ahead and line this up. Go. And here I am right off the next corner. I don't always need to trim off all these excess scant thread, but I do a lot of it. I do. If you look on my page, I've got some pictures of some giant snakes that I've made. And I just recently got commissioned to make a 20-foot snake. And on that 20-foot snake, I'm going to be putting a blanket so that it comes out of the tail. So it's basically going to be a cuddle buddy, blanket, pillow, knapsack kind of situation. All right, so here is the belly. Now, if I just sewed this on and I didn't have this little groove right here, it would create a flat stomach. By adding this, it gives it a little bit more shape and it will round out so the belly will come down and go out a little bit, kind of a little pooch. It does look like a heart. And if you are making plushes of your own, adding this little wedge, you can change the degree of the curve a little bit. I do it for my possums, so it gives them just that little bit of a poochy belly. But you can do it tighter. You can do multiple of them to get a full rounded. So there's a lot of options you can use that same concept for. All right, so as you can see, I have to turn it as I go, and I'm going to want to turn all the way until I meet the edge. I'm going to show you this. Now, the cut ends here, but you can see that I took it all the way around, and what will happen is you can actually see that it rounds the belly out. So it goes all the way to this edge, and this is where the shape takes place. If I were to just follow straight with my path and just go a straight line off, what happens is it creates this kind of point, and it doesn't set smoothly. Pretty good rounded belly there. Just a little bit of a pooch. And now I'm going to put this on. This is the bottom of my belly. Now that's by choice. You can design it however you want. Encourage more viewers to share. Share the live link. I'm not sure who I would share the live link to, so if you can help me figure that out, I'm more than happy to. Now, I'm going to show you this as an example. Oops, let me go ahead and put a crease in there. Need to get my pen working. Let's try that again. What I'm going to show you is how I essentially go about centering this. Fold this over, make sure that all my fabric is in place. Now, when I start sewing, that's going to be my center mark. Make sure that's at my neck. Again, this is my butt. This is the rounded part at my butt. This is the rounded at the bottom of my belly. That is all choice. You don't have to do something like that whenever you're making your own plushes. You just decide on how you want yours to be shaped, but that's how this one turns out to be shaped. With the belly, I'm going to pin it all the way around. Now, I do have to be a little bit careful because, as I mentioned before, what will happen is one or both of the fabrics will stretch as I'm working, and that includes when I pin it in place. So if I'm not careful, I'll stretch this one out and I'll bunch this one up, and it won't go all the way around. What I'm aiming for is to have this seam at the same point as the bottom seam. If it doesn't wind up perfect, I can readjust my pins. And technically, while it doesn't have to be perfect at all in the end, if I get it as close as what I feel will work, then that's all I'm aiming for. And I can readjust accordingly. I can already tell. See, you can see that it is not lining up. I do not like that. So I'm going to go ahead and repin this center piece. So now I have the top and the bottom centered and pinned. And I'm going to do a little bit of unpinning. Hopefully this will help me readjust. This happens to me all the time. Even if this is absolutely perfectly cut, there's a lot of possibility that one will stretch. And as you can see, I'm already getting a lot better. See, that's got my shape to it. And nothing's stretched. Nothing's bunched up, and my centers are lined up. Now, my last one, I'll just have to do the same thing on this side. Again, when you cut something, my basic explanation is that you're not going to wind up cutting it perfect. Anywhere between when you put the pattern on, when you traced it, or when you cut it and you just moved weird, even if it's cut perfectly, these two ends may not want to match up perfectly. And doing this by hand is just safer than automatically sewing. I used to be like, all right, that's close enough. I know I got it to fit. And I would just start sewing. And what would happen is I would be uneven. The whole thing would be thrown off because I did not pin it. So I advise you to always pin your pieces together. The bigger ones for sure. Smaller ones, depending on how much you need it. And it'll make a big difference. Now, when I made the mistake over here, let me find this piece. I sewed my outside to my inside. This time I'm doing it right. I got both my insides together. This way, when I right side it out, all my pattern will be on the outside. It seems obvious. I just got in a hurry, I guess, made a silly mistake, and now I've got to correct it. The good news is you get to see me correcting something, so if you need to know how. But the bad news is I have to correct it, and I hate it. It's annoying, having to do extra work. But at the very least, you kind of get some ideas. I'm going to try and make a plushing. You should definitely do that. If you have any kind of questions while you're doing it, I will do my best to help. I know we've got a little bit of a language barrier, but I am definitely patient. If there's certain things that you want help with. I don't know how experienced you are. You said you do it by hand, so you probably have a little bit of an easier time doing some of the things than I did. And one fun thing is you can always just make a random plush too. No ideas, no plans. You cut out a few pieces. I have an entire box of remnants that are like large chunks of random shaped material, similar to this, but like large. And I will get matching colors and just start sewing pieces together. Put it in the machine, just kind of run it through, just kind of let it come together how it wants. And then I will be like, okay, that looks like more of an arm. And I will make my own different kinds of random plushes that way. It's a lot of fun, and you make these really cute things. And to me, it feels like you're giving something a second chance because you have all these extra pieces that you were going to throw away otherwise that did not make it into a plush. And when you get to use them, it feels like you've got a brand new chance at something cuddly and lovable. All right, now, I would normally inside this out, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go ahead and run with my idea. All right, I will, in this case, put the neck really close to the edge. I'm using this as my circle. Let's see if I can flatten this out just enough. I think this is how big I want the circle to be. See, if I put it here, that's a pretty good sized neck. Because what's going to happen is it's going to stretch out as I sew it together. Yes, I agree. If you're not going to put the effort into making the plush and giving it that extra little bit of love, then it feels like there's anything else that you could do. There's so many other things that you can make clothes if you're not going to build it that way. And not to suggest that you can't build clothes with love. But I like to do what I can to make them feel like they are special, which is why I do a lot of the little things that I do. It helps me feel like I'm actually making something that somebody's going to love because it deserves it. All right, so a little bit of extra line here so I can find it. There is a chance that I need to bring this a little bit more forward. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to bring the neck forward. Man, I'm kind of worried. I don't know for sure which size I used here. That seems like such a big hole. Like I'm trying to decide if maybe I don't need it that big. So maybe I'm going to try just a little bit smaller. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to center it a little bit closer to the front of the neck. So hopefully what'll happen is it'll have just a little bit of chin right here. But I'm really not sure which side I use. So I'm kind of, like I said, this is a pattern that I've only made a couple times. So there's a lot of little things that I'm just not sure of. And while I definitely made the pattern, there's still a lot of room for it to grow. I just have to figure out where those rooms are. Okay. Now, using this as my circle is mostly because it's a firm shape that I can tell where it's at. That still might be a little bit too far forward. One day, depending on how popular this design is, I make plushies who can move like a model. I don't know how to say it. That's interesting. Like giving them joints. I like that idea. I've seen that a couple times. A few people have done that, but I haven't tried it yet. I really wish I could remember which I used. I know that I used this cup, this exact same cup, to figure out my neck the first time, but I can't remember if it was the big end or not. So we'll see what happens here. A little bit of experimentation, I guess. Trying to make sure I don't cut myself. And then cut along here. The good news is it doesn't literally have to be perfect. I will pin and sew and figure out the other details. And if I need to go bigger, then I will. Let's see. This looks like... Let's see, do I feel like that's the same side? No, that is definitely not. So I'm pretty sure that I used the big side. See how big that neck gets right there? And this does not get quite as big. Now, the relevance is that without the width of the neck, this is just going to be a donkey head. And that's not what I'm wanting. I want it to look like a bunny. So let's do a little bit more work here. See if I can't get this to the right shape that I want. Now, anyone that's wondering, yes, there is a way that I could have made my pattern so that this is all already put together, so that I essentially wouldn't have to worry about cutting it out afterwards. The reason I have not is because I haven't made this too many times. I'm not even sure if it's going to be something that winds up being popular enough to make more of. So I haven't put that extra little bit of work into it. Let's see, I think that should be a little bit better. And then if it winds up happening that I want to, I definitely can. And essentially I'll just make the pattern so it's got this opening right here. It's just that it's not going to look the same on all pieces. For example, you can see that one arch here and one arch here, and if you put them together, that's not even a full circle every time. And then this comes down all the way. So it's a weird shape because, again, this is 3D on a 2D material. All right, I'm going to take the fluff out of my head. I had done this yesterday while I was on live, and I stuffed the head so that I could have like an ending point because I ran completely out of time. Sometimes these things take so long and I just wind up losing track of time, and it wound up being bedtime. I was doing this really late at night. So I'm going to unstuff. I'm going to right side it in. Oh, there's so many things that I'm trying to do at the same time that I forgot some other details. So what I'm going to do before I get too far along, as I'll show you afterwards, is I have a top for this bunny, and I'm going to have to sew that into the chest. I'll just have to figure out where, based on a little bit of practice and trial and error. So you're kind of seeing me relearn how to do a lot of this different stuff all at the same time. And where do you get these stuffs? So my craft store actually has fluff. So it's not hard to find, but I couldn't tell you if it's accessible everywhere kind of situation. And it's a really nice fluff. It's soft. It feels pretty well. You can super stuff and it'll be like a firm plush. But also you can go really loose with it and have a lot of softness to it. All right, so there's going to be my circle. Trying not to break anything with my scissors while I'm cutting. Now, it is a bummer that I'm going over some stitches. It does mean that there's some loose stitches, but the thing is, I am literally going to sew right back over it when I put the two pieces together. So I'm not as worried as I might be otherwise. All right, see, nice little circle. But even if you're looking at it, this is the shape that it would actually be cutting out. And that's why I can't just add that to my pattern. It takes a lot of extra steps to kind of get there. All right, so making sure I don't accidentally sew my ears. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and stuff my ears back through this little hole so that my ears are up and out of the way. Come on, you can do it. What's happening here? Oh, I'm not pulling on the right piece. All right, so I'm going to get my ears up and out of the way. I'm now going to pin these two pieces together, making sure that I don't make that same mistake again that I did earlier. So I'm going to make sure that the outside materials are connected. Try and center my face as best I can. All right, so here is where my stitch is going to come together. It will definitely be a little bit easier as I've made this a few more times, because then I will know where my spacing needs to be, all these other little details that become more apparent as I work. Get the whole head pushed in here. And I'm just going to run this along. I've got a back, the seam on the back of my head as well that I'm going to line up to the back of the shoulder, the very back of the body. This is one of those things that when you're sewing it together, it's very easy to get stabbed. I'm going to have a ring with a whole bunch of needles just pointing straight up at me. And then I'm also going to be running the sewing machine on the inside. So I'm really going to have so many opportunities to stab myself. It's going to be absolutely horrible. Every time I do it, I have to go super slow. And I'm going to poke myself. It's just whether or not I poke myself badly is the question. All right, so I keep having to pull the head up just a little bit while I'm trying to find the edges because I don't want everything to get lost inside. It's also why I started at the center, because as I'm kind of doing this, I don't want to turn it sideways. I want them to be facing forward. I want her to be facing forward. In the end, this is going to be kind of weeby, but I'm okay with that. I like the idea of making plushes for adults, whether it be horror or erotic or just favorite things that people otherwise don't make plushes of. But of course, I like making plushes for anybody that's interested. And that is one of the things. If you are interested in something, let me know. I may not make a brand new pattern live, but that's because it takes so many failed attempts that I can't imagine it being fun to watch. It's literally fail until you get it right. Sometimes some of the shapes I can get pretty quick. If I know how I want to make a head, usually a head comes together really well. In this case, making the head with these rounded cheeks right here was important for the design and was very hard to make. I must put these needles into plushies. So you don't have to. If you can keep it together just fine, then you don't need to. And if you're doing it by hand, you super don't need to. I do it because when I start to sew with the machine, I'm going to wind up stretching one of the materials or the other, and it just won't line up. So you have to pick what's easiest for you. Now, there is several other methods you could utilize. For example, if you wanted to, you could use a needle and thread and just line stitch it, and that'll hold it in place. Then you won't have all these needles trying to poke you. But it still holds the material in place, and that's what's important. All right, got my edges lined up. I gotta find my pedal. All right, so if you can see this or not, here, let me go ahead and change my camera angle a little. If you can see, all these needles are going to try and stab me every step of the way. So I have to sew super carefully. And when I can, I will take out some needles. Ow, son of a gun. But I can't always reach them when they made it through. So just a little bit. And yes, I had to use this many needles because of the shape that I'm using. All right, so I'm going to try and pull a couple of these out. The less that are in there, the less likely I am to stab myself as I continue. But also, I'm very likely to stab myself while I'm doing it. And I don't like that either. Okay, there we go. That's 2 down. Now at least I can pull on this side. There's going to be parts that are harder to get through the machine because you've got multiple seams at the same spot. So you just kind of got to be careful about speed. You don't want to pull it too tight. If you do pull it too tight, you'll wind up binding some of your material up and it changes the shape of what you're making in a negative way. It's getting a little bit easier to pull the needles out because I'm coming across less as I go. All right, way less needles now. Now, as I'm kind of sewing, I'm trying to make sure I don't have anything else folding into the way. Now, anyone wondering, if you're looking at what I'm doing and it feels like what I'm doing is stupid or wrong, it very likely could be. What I'm doing is basically what I've taught myself. I am all self-taught on all of this. I've figured out things through failure. I started doing one thing and then another. And because of that, there's a lot of things that I might be doing that a properly trained seamstress would be laughing at. Okay, let's see here. Now, if I've done this right, I should be able to right side this out through my back hole. Wait, let me go ahead and double check. So when doing stuff like this, I can't always see the stitches. So I will take my chopstick and run it along the edges to make sure it doesn't stab through. Just to make sure I actually got fabric on everything, didn't miss any kind of stitches on it. And it looks like I'm good. All right, so let's untangle some of the head here. Get those ears back through there. The ears are a little bit harder to pull through just because I put that extra stuffing in it before I sewed them. But still, see, not too hard at all. Just a little bit more difficult. Now, let's get this out of the way. Oh no, we're about to find out if I completely messed up that chin. All right, now I'm going to have to restuff. I can actually sew up the top of the head too. And the reason I didn't is because I just didn't see a point in it yet. But we're going to do a real quick stuff and fluff and see what happens. And if I'm lucky, I don't have to start over. If I'm unlucky, I'll basically just kind of do a few more parts here and then start over later. Yeah, it looks like, see, I got it a little bit too close to the chin. So it looks like it's going to come right out at the same spot. I'm not sure how it's going to look, but we're going to find out. One of the funny things I discovered last time when I made one of these is when I attached the head and the body together, that in itself looked cute enough where I could have just stopped right there before adding feet. So maybe that's what's going to happen with this. I'll use it that way. It'll just be kind of a cosmic bunny with no legs. Learned yourself to draw? That's excellent. Teaching yourself how to do art is fantastic. I mean, at some point in time, depending on what your goal with it is, it's great to have people with experience teach you things. But learning how to draw, I taught myself how to draw from when I was very young. And eventually I wanted to get technically better. So I did go to school, and it helped, but it didn't help because I really had a whole lot of good teachers. I actually had some really horrible teachers. And it wasn't that they were bad teachers, because some of them were actually bad teachers. Most of them were in fact. But some of them just didn't have the skill set that would help me progress. A couple of them knew the technical details. They could say, hey, you do blank and blank, and it'll help you do better. And that was enough to give me enough information to move forward. But I taught myself a lot just by doing. So if you want to learn how to do an art project, my best suggestion to you is just keep doing it. Look at it objectively, come back to it later, see where you've messed up. But by just continuously working, you'll find you'll get a lot better. And it's the same thing with making these plushes. I learned a lot by making it over and over and over again and failing over and over and over again. And in the end, I don't know how much difference it would have made if I was technically taught by someone who knew exactly what they were doing from the start. Oops, looks like I am almost out of my fluff here. I'm going to go get some more so I can make this nice and firm. If I am really lucky, I didn't mess up my head and body. I will be right back. Now, I try to be as prepped as I can for when I'm making something live, but I'm still learning as well. So sometimes I just keep having to wander off for some of the silly things that I have forgotten. Yep. Whenever you're kind of stuffing your plush, the truth is, I think it's better to overstuff it because the fluff is going to compact over time. And if you overstuff it just a little bit to begin with, you can actually see its shape. It makes a big difference from when it's lightly stuffed to understuffed. Now, a firm plush kind of feels more like a pillow as well, so that's kind of nice. But for me, the most important thing is being able to see exactly what you've got. Well, that's not too bad. I think that the neck will work. In the future, I'm probably going to want to have a little bit more underneath the neck. So you can see it a little bit better here. I'm going to want just a little bit further in so it has just a little bit of a difference between here and here. Because in truth, I want this to be separate and there to be like a chin underneath. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of adjusting on how I set this up. And as is, indeed, it is definitely a chunky bunny. Let's go ahead and see. Put the last little bit more stuffing in here. But the good news is I don't feel like I have to start over on it. Didn't miss any stitches. Got some weird shape to it a little bit. Some stuff that will hide. If you look right here, you can actually see that little point that I was told you I was trying to avoid by curving it. And if I wind up unstuffing this and redoing it, that's one of the things I'll do is I'll curve by stitching a little bit extra rounded right there. But you can also see this flat area, it does come up rounded, but you can see a much more pronounced rounding on the belly where I put that little wedge. You just have to plan for it. What is better with purple? Is it white or yellow? Just asking because of my plushie. I'm not sure. So it depends on what you're making. Technically, as far as color theory goes, white or purple and yellow are complementary colors, so they do look fantastic together. But it depends on what you're making. I have found that there are very few colors, if any, that don't look good together, depending on what you're doing. So maybe just kind of hold it up, see what you want to do. I think that white will look great with purple, but yellow could make it pop more. Additionally, yellow in itself is very poppy, so that's not a bad thing either. All right, I will close that stitch up later when I get to that point, but I don't need to do that yet. Still going to decide what else I'm going to set up for it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use these as an example. I'm going to stuff these feet so you can kind of see roughly what will happen. I don't need the feet to be so stuffed that they're overly shaped. Well, I guess it kind of just doesn't matter. I want it to be firm as well. I'm not too worried about it being too firm. There we go. And put that together like this. All right, so I will then sew this on. Now, if this was a different design, this would just drive me crazy. There's no way that I would set this up like this because it's just going to be a single stitch right here. But because of the fact that there's going to be bazongas, it kind of hides underneath. And that makes a big difference. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier is that I have to attach this material right here. This is technically the top of my bunny's clothes. You can see how that kind of flits in there when there's nothing to hold it in place. And you can see what I meant by the plush, the legs, they just kind of attach. I would never do something like that as is without there being more reason to it. There's a few other things I might try. It doesn't look absolutely horrible or anything, but it's definitely not what I would like. So before I can attach these, I think what I am going to do is I'm going to unstuff this, and then I'm going to break the seams right here. I'm going to go through, seam rip just a little bit, just a couple inches, so that I can put the top in. Before I even do that, I have to sew my top. So let's see if I can find all my pieces. Here they are. All right, this is going to take a few extra steps. Again, I haven't got everything memorized, so what's happening here is as best as I can do without trying to screw myself over. I've drawn this up so that the top, I will be able to fold back and sew just a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and sew these together. This is going to connect across here. That's going to give it some shape. That is the center seam of my dress, my top. It's not so big that I feel like I have to pin it in place. So you can see exactly what I mean by you don't always have to pin it. Then I'm going to go ahead and sew the arches here. This will give me a solid, it basically looks like a tube top. Now, based on the time I'm looking at here, I am not going to have the time to completely finish this busty bunny up. Give myself my little bit of curve. So I'm going to do as much as I can today. And then I'm going to decide whether or not I want to finish the rest of it off camera and then make the clothing tomorrow or Monday. So if you are interested in seeing how this is going to turn out and you have a preference, do you want to see me put the whole bunny together? Or would it be more interesting now that you've seen most of it to have it be put together and then watch me build clothes for it? Because the intention is I'm going to build a wizard cloak and a wizard hat using some galaxy material or star material. And I'm also going to give her some glasses because I think that that'll be kind of cute. So if anybody has any opinion on it, just please let me know. Today I will not have time to finish all of this, but we'll see how far we make it. All right, so this is going to be my top. I build it so that the fuzz will go down, and that lets me know what my top is. If the fuzz is going down, then that means this is my top. And I've got that written down somewhere as well, but it's a little bit easier this way. Now, If I were to be building a seam on a regular piece of cotton, I would probably use a piece of bias, fold it over a couple little areas. But for this piece, I don't need to worry too much about there being a separate section or just a nice clean edge in the same way. As you can see, the inside here is raw material. And all I did was fold the edge so that I didn't have a unraveling edge that frayed on me. And now I'm just going to sew along this to kind of give it a nice clean edge. I'm going to do that on both the top and the bottom. Not a hard thing to stitch, but I definitely have to pin it because otherwise it's just going to come unfolded on me. Especially since it's not a straight line. It curves with the top itself. And I want it to look pretty even, so I have to sew it the whole way across at roughly the same thickness. And there's going to be a couple points that are a little bit off, but when it's sewn together, it'll look nice and smooth. When I kind of get more used to doing this bunny, I will have the wherewithal to plan this in advance. And I will actually tuck it into the belly before I sew. I'll sew all this on and then tuck it into the belly before I put that together. It's a little bit annoying because I forgot about it. And my intention is to stitch it right inside here between these two pieces so that it comes out. So basically now I have to go through and unstitch this. And you can see right here what I'm referring to. It's between the belly and the side. And it has to be level, but it doesn't have to be in a specific spot because the material or the plush part that I use to make the breasts will actually hold it in place really well. Okay. So really close to the edge. That way I don't have to worry about it coming undone. Pulling my pins as I go. Now there is something to be said about factories that just pump these things out. You do 20 or 30 of them in an hour. Otherwise you're not doing your job fast enough. Because there are a lot of little things, for example, like what I'm doing here, that if I was doing some sort of name brand, super important, hand-stitched, $200 plush, I would do a little bit differently. I would do a little bit of a bias line on it. Creating a different type of edge, maybe even sewing both the fuzzy material on the inside and the outside. I almost just stabbed my thumb so badly. But for this, a quick stitch like this, for a project that I'm going to be doing a few of, and I still want to make sure that it looks good and it holds strong, I think that this is a plentiful way to close the edge up. Again, it's very important to me that these things are made well, but there is something about, not wanting to spend 4 hours on everything you make. I'm going to find something, so I'm sorry if I don't comment, but I hear what you're saying. Hey, do what you're doing. I appreciate the attention that you're giving me so far. I appreciate you being part of this. It makes it so much more fun when I can talk to somebody. And I definitely appreciate the opportunity to kind of help out because it lets people see that I am willing to help out, which is also important to me. I think that if I'm going to do any kind of something that seems like a tutorial, that I feel like it's important that I'm willing to answer questions. But also, I can see why someone doing live is like, look, I'm doing my thing. Let me do it. Don't bug me with questions. So it's important that people know that I am happy to answer questions. At least I think it is. All right. I am once again pinning down just enough of this edge so that I don't have a unfinished edge of this tube top that I'm making. I'm calling it a tube top. It's not literally a tube top, but I think that in the end, it looks close enough to the tube top to work by saying tube top 20 times. Just stabbed right into myself. That's fantastically fun. One of the biggest problems about sewing and then using these push pins is the amount of times that you find that it's easy to get stabbed by your own self. All right, I'm trying to fold around a bend here and add a seam. Both individually are a problem. Combined, it is a pain in the butt. Because I have to make it the fold deep enough so that when I sew it, it has something to grab a hold of. Otherwise, it'll just flip back out whenever I'm done, and that will be annoying too. Okay, let's see. I think that's got me a good curve. See, gives it a curve instead of like edge, 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 or angle, angle, angle. And back stitches, pull out the first needle, and let's get going. Oops. Oh, I can see right there that I'm going to have to hold it in place. Get this needle out of the way. And in case you're wondering, if it pops into your mind, the curiosity, I actually have my needle on the right-hand side to keep my stitches as close to the edge as I can, as often as I can. I still give myself a little bit of leeway where possible, especially on bigger plushes, so that it's not right up against the edge. But here when I'm sewing this kind of seam, I don't think seam's the right word. I have it a little bit close to the edge anyways, because all I'm doing is closing up an area. Once again, I am all self-taught, so if you see something that I'm doing that just seems ridiculous and stupid, I'm totally open to hearing criticism, especially when it helps me do better at what I want to do. All right. You can see how that is going to hold my shape. There's even a dip at the cleavage. And let's go ahead and do some of the tedious work now. I just went through the trouble of stuffing this up. And now I'm just going to take it all right back out and put it right back in the bag. If you are curious, this is what I use, polyfill. They also make pellets for weighted material. So if you wind up looking for a way to start your own plushes, maybe you just want to make horns to go onto some headphones or add to a hat, you can find the polyfill pretty cheaply, and it goes quite a long way. When you're doing smaller projects, even if you stuff a smaller project super tight, it doesn't even matter. Now this piece will use quite a bit of fluff. I think that's the most fluff I've used in a long time, because for the last month or two, I've just been making several little mice and just recently started making bunnies. So I've been able to go on like one bag for more than a month because of how far the stuff will stretch on a small project. Like the amount of fluff that goes into this bunny's head is probably pretty close to the same amount of fluff that I would use for a whole 10 little mice. Yes, you can buy the material on Amazon. I don't have to, but I have found their weighted stuff. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know how available it is. And I don't know where exactly it would be available. So I don't have like a store that I would follow. But from what I have seen, I have found it online as well. So Amazon, a few other places. Do a little bit of searching around. You might even be able to buy it for bulk or smaller, cheaper amounts. I'm not sure, but it's something worth looking into, I promise. I have also seen people just kind of take apart pillows and other plushes, cannibalized from a previous plush that they had that they no longer use. So there's a lot of other options out there to keep in mind, but it should be pretty readily available. Now, I had mentioned earlier that if I inside this out, I'm going to try and fix the belly a little bit. It's got just a tiny little point right here. So what I'm going to do is just sew just a little bit more of a curve into it. I'm going to start where my previous stitch was and then just kind of bring it around. And then if I'm lucky, I have fixed that. I don't mind if there's a little bit more of a pooch on it, but I'm pretty sure that that'll help. You can see that my line is even more curved now instead of coming to that point. It's a very thin difference right here, which can become a problem slowly depending on how far you go. And hopefully I didn't cut anything wrong. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to attach this. I have to make sure that I definitely want to make sure that I have the top down and everything, but that's going to come later. So I need to stitch right inside here, right on the edge of my belly. I want to attach this end. So I'm going to unstitch from about here to here, and I'll do just a couple little quick marks. If you're wondering why I use a pen, this material is so fluffy that the chalk and soapstone that I have used in the past just does not stay. I'm going to go ahead and slide that up just a little bit. So we'll put it right here. So I can unstitch from here to about here. And then I will do the same thing on the other side. Let's go ahead. Try and get this level, flat. There we go. Fold it in half. There's one, there's the other. Those have lined up, and put a mark here. And then once again, this will keep it pretty flat, pretty even. Oh no. Did I already mess that up? Yes, I think I did. Where's my marks? I've got one mark here. Yeah, see, somehow, even though I just did that, I did not even realize that I was so far off. A little closer, there we go. And then I'm just going to keep pinching this till I line up. Hopefully I don't make that same mistake. Now, again, once I have developed this pattern just a little bit more, what will happen is I will put marks on my piece so that I know where all these connect at. I'm going to double check the length, make sure that I didn't make it super long somehow. Okay, good. Now, when I put it together, I can actually save myself some space. I'm just going to overcut this a little. The first time that I put this together, I did a very long stitch, like a 4 stitch. So I was able to find where I was at, get to my stitches really easy. I just completely forgot. And this time I had fully intended to put it in when I first did the belly together. I even thought about it moments beforehand, but then I started pinning it, forgot what I was doing. All kinds of silly stuff happens. And I think it's because I got super aggravated that I messed up on the thighs. And I don't know if you realize this, but sometimes one little thing will just kind of sandbag everything down. And it drives me crazy because I was doing so well at some point. And then I just completely forgot what I was doing and wanting to do. It used to happen all the time with the mice. I would mess up one thing. I'd forget to put the ears in. I'd forget to attach the belly or the tail. And over time, I got so used to doing it that now I don't even have to worry about it. But again, this is a brand new design. This is only the 3rd time I put this together, and I wouldn't say that I've perfected it yet either. So there's a lot of mistakes that I keep making. For example, when I put the foot together, I accidentally attached this part to the wrong side. It should be on the inside. It should be inside pattern to inside pattern. And that I've got to go back and fix later too. So I'm super excited about making mistakes. It's really lots of annoying fun, right? It is part of it. I get it. But that doesn't make it any less aggravating, especially trying to do something live where with luck I can get something finished while people are watching and seeing if they enjoy that. I suppose it helps to know that I'm human, but I don't think there was any question about that. So I am currently unstitching just a few inches of the belly here. And the point is that I'm going to put the tube top inside there. Is something messed up? Sometimes when something messes up, it's totally okay. You've got this quirky little thing that happens, and when you put it together, it's like, oh, that's funny. It's lopsided, or oh, that's funny. It pulled a little bit on this side. But when it's a a crucial mistake that you really actually have to fix, it's only funny when it happens to somebody else. So I don't appreciate you laughing at me. It's not cool, man. Not cool. All right, this is pretty close to done on this side. I have to be careful not to pull too tight, too hard when I'm trying to pull these apart, because I don't want to break either of these materials. They can both be pretty delicate. All right, I've got both pulled to my line. I'm just going to go ahead and stuff this in here and make sure I get it right. All right, so I've got the top. Here's my top. I want it to go this way so it comes out. So I have to get you all the way stuffed in this direction. This is one of those things where you kind of have to pay close enough attention to not make another silly mistake after fixing a previous silly mistake. I'm going to pin this as I go so I don't lose it. And if I have to stretch it back out, that's totally fine. Now I'm trying to make sure that I have the excess pulled through while also making sure this piece and this piece stay lined up. Otherwise, it won't sew together. I'll just have to do some extra stitching. That wouldn't be the worst kind of thing to fix because all I would literally do is flip it around and then add more stitches. But I'm already trying to make up time, so I'm trying to make sure I don't do anything else silly. All right. Try and keep it a little bit even based on my design. I think that if I just keep the same amount of space on the outside, this should work out pretty well. Okay, I'm going to do this just real quick. I have to make sure I backstitch into my previous line where I just tore it off so that that thread doesn't fray on me. And you can see that these needles are not actually in the way. I am able to stitch right over them because my sewing machine is going right past them. Occasionally it will catch, but usually it's pretty nominal and just slides right off of it because it is just one solid point up against a very tiny rounded surface. Something else I'm going to do while I'm here so I don't forget, and I just remembered, is I'm going to go ahead and re-stitch the top of my head. I don't need that opening since I attached it at the neck, so I'm just going to go ahead and close that off so that I don't forget. I was thinking about it, and just like with the top, I don't want to wind up forgetting and then coming back later. Okay, now I've got an entire another side to slightly unstitch. All right, got this one on. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I've got my lines marked. But I don't want to be mean. No, I'm not laughing about the plushie. It's how you act, and I like those people. Well, you know what? I appreciate it. I know I was giving you a hard time. I'm sorry. I forget that sometimes the language barrier causes a little bit of issue as far as humor goes as well. I was giving you a hard time. I really did not think you were laughing at me. I promise. I thought it was all good fun. No worries. All right, so I'm trying to unstitch again. This side seems to be wanting to be a little bit more of a pain. I still have to go very slowly so that I don't accidentally cut the material on my Galaxy print. The good news is that because it is black on white, I can actually super see it. If this was the other side, I can see it, but it's just not as easy to see. So I am unstitching once again so that I can fit my tube top in there. And I'm trying to be as careful as I can. Fortunately, I used to stitch so close together that I would literally have to abandon a piece. If I were to make a mistake like this and had to unstitch it, my stitches were so close that I just had to say, nope, I'm done. I got to restart, recut everything. I do have still a pretty tight stitch, but not nearly like it was. And I think this is a good enough distance. I've got my machine set at 2, which you can't quite see here. It's a pretty good distance where when I am doing a final piece that I don't think I have to worry too much about, it works. But when I am doing something brand new, I will oftentimes do it at a stitch of 4 or greater, because then if I mess up and I need to test something out, undoing that stitch, like what I'm sitting here, it's almost a 1/4 of an inch apart. And it makes it so much, it holds together perfectly for what I'm testing, but it also makes it so much easier to come apart if that's what I need to do. This didn't do too bad. Now let's see how it comes apart. All right, got a few extra stitches here that I can pull out. I can see them in here. You probably can't see it on camera, but I can actually see the black stitches between it. I just have to find them enough to be able to cut them individually and keep going. My understanding is that you can use a seam ripper by pushing into and then running it across. This material has such a wide weave to it, and it's such a soft material that more often than not, all I wound up doing was cutting into my material and losing an entire piece. Just kind of trying to find my threads. A couple little stitches here and there. A lot of this is coming out, but there's just enough in place where it's holding steady. And again, I'm just pulling firm enough to separate it. And since there is a break in the thread, it is coming up enough for me to see the next couple stitches. So if you wind up having to fix something like this, like what I'm doing, just take it slow. You'll learn your own method. I'm absolutely sure of it. I'm confident in every one of your abilities. All right, now I've got it torn from here to here. That should be exactly what I need. Those are the points that I marked. I've already got it inside. Just want to make sure that I don't twist it. There we go. All right, excellent. Now I can do the same thing. I will sew and pin. This definitely would have been easier had I remembered when I was initially putting it together. If I were initially putting it together, I would already be like halfway done with the next part of this. So keep in mind, as you're learning to make something, if you're making your own version of something and you're making it multiple times, that learning curve will be annoying as heck, because you don't always have to do the same thing for any project. In this case, this turned out to be what I felt was the easiest and cleanest method to attach that top. But that doesn't mean that it'll be the same thing if I do clothes for another figure. And what will wind up happening is when I'm starting that, I will completely forget. I'll do it wrong. All right, now before I sew that on, I want to kind of make sure that these lined up a little bit. So I'm just going to fold this in. And there is my center. Okay, that looks good. Ow. Yeah, it looks like it lined up pretty well. I may be off center on this top, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this side out a little bit. Kind of leave a little bit of slack in the body itself. And I'm going to try and get it to the higher point that I've got. But I don't want to pull it too tight. If I pull it too tight, it'll actually pull the body in as well. And I don't want it to change the shape of the body. So I have to do it just the right amount of adjustment. Maybe add an extra pin or two. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll go ahead and add an extra pin. And I think that that's what I need. All right, so get this stitch going again. And again, running pretty close to the edge, but now I'm sewing over several pieces of material. A little bit higher, bring it back. I have to make sure I don't accidentally cut my needles, my push pins. Find my excess, cut this off. I just don't like that being in there. Now I've got all this extra fuzz and everything else in different spots. All right, now I closed off the head, so that's not there anymore. I met you in person one time at the Halloween event. Oh, that's awesome. I actually remember meeting like 2 people that had actually seen me on there. Are you doing clothes too or just plush? So far, just plushies. I've done very little in the way of clothing. I think I remember talking to you and you said that you recognized my mice before, Kit. Like they came across your For You page at some point. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Today, I don't know if you saw, but I am making a Busty Bunny, a Galaxy version. So I'm making this Busty Bunny, but with Galaxy in purple. And I think that I've officially got the body all sewn together. Now I just got to restuff the whole thing and start attaching parts. It is 2:05. I have 20 minutes before I have to go pick up my kid. So I officially can guarantee you I will not have time to finish this, but I should have time to stuff this and then use the previous breastises as an example of how it'll kind of look. Now, I am definitely using Galaxy material for the top, for the mammaries, the breasts. But I'm going to show you what it's going to look like in the end by putting some of the purple material that I've got. Because the previous plush that I made did not find its home. I'm not sure if the person is going to still want to order it. But unfortunately, when I made the design, there was a whole plan to make these plush eyes. And I realized that the amount of time it takes to make this, I can't do it at the estimated cost. And they wanted about 4 or 5 of them. And I would love to be able to make that. First off, business-wise, it's great. But also what's happening is that she would be selling it to her fans. And it just seems like a great way to kind of get my stuff out there. But there's a certain degree of, look, it's taken me so many hours just to figure it out. And it's going to take me so many hours each time I make one. Even this one, as the 3rd one that I've made, has taken me so long. I've already worked for an hour and a half trying to put it together. And yes, I am definitely still figuring it out. And once I have it figured out, I'll probably be able to do this whole thing super quick. I won't make those silly mistakes that I have to fix, and that'll make all the difference in itself. And all these little things will become easier. I'll find little changes in the pattern to make. But I make this by myself. I have designed this. I created the draw. I started with an image, and I did all the drawing and additions to it. Oh, by the way, in case you were here earlier, you could see that I finally fixed that curve on the belly by adding that extra little bit of stitch to it. But essentially what I'm saying is that as much as I love doing this, there are certain things that I have to keep in mind as far as productivity and effort. And if it takes me like 3 hours to make something, I kind of have to have a certain amount of compensation if I'm doing it for somebody. I understand fully that there are going to be times when I'm going to give an estimate and I'm like, all right, I think this is how much it's going to cost, and I will stick to that. For example, when she decided she wanted a brand new bunny design, I told her I will make a prototype and a first version for this much money. And it turned out that I also learned from that it should take more, because it took me days of failure to kind of get it to be the right shape, just to get something unique. So I have learned that, as unfortunate as it may be, and because it may cause me to get less commissions, I have to charge more for brand new designs. So here's the bunny. Here's roughly what it will look like. But when I get finished, it'll also have breasts, Galaxy breasts. And as funny as it is, I think that that's a lot of fun to make. And then I will also have the legs sticking down. So it'll look a little bit more like, let's go ahead and stuff this up right. So I'll have this in here, but there'll be Galaxy, and then I'll have the paws underneath. Oh, let me go ahead and put some stuffing in this guy. Put some stuffing in here so we can get a full look of it. Overstuffed, understuffed, doesn't really matter. Just kind of got to make sure it has the shape. So I have not decided. The original plan was I was going to do something that I've built up. It basically works out as an applique eye. And I would do like a cartoon eye for it. But what I'm kind of thinking I'm going to wind up doing, depending on details, I'm going to ask some people, kind of get some feedback. I've got, let me see how big of an eye I've got here. I've got these safety eyes. Now I've got bigger ones, but essentially the safety eyes will go in and they'll look good. I even have noses. I have a couple, I might have some other colored noses like brown or something like that. But I also have a nose. So I have a few options, but I won't know until I get to that point. And what I'm probably going to wind up doing, since this is going to be a wizard bunny when I'm done, I'm going to give her a hat and a cloak, and I'm probably going to give her glasses. There's going to be a few other things that will change as well. So if you were looking at it, you can see the feet hanging out the bottom. I'm going to sew the breast to the top so that they kind of seem a little bit more smooth. And I will let you guys help me decide on a few of the other details when I kind of get that far. Just to kind of show that was with the breasts in. And I could easily turn this into a male bunny by just kind of removing that. You can see how that looks. I honestly love the way this looks without the arms and legs. I think that that's a cute little concept that maybe I can do other animals in. But for the breasts and everything else put in, that's roughly what we're going to look at. And see how the legs all come out. This sticks out the bottom. And when you can see that that's how they look otherwise. And I thought about turning these into the breasts, like make a real big top for the arms that just come down and they just hide. But there's a part of me that thinks that there's going to be eventually a point in time where people are going to want there to be breasts and separated. And I think it's going to make all the difference. All right, folks. I have just enough time to get my kids' snacks ready, to get packed up and go. I hope you had some fun. I'm going to do a little bit more of this later. I'm not sure how much of this will be done on camera. If you are interested in seeing every step of this on the way, let me know and I will make sure that I do it all live. But otherwise, I'm probably going to catch up, fix my mistake with my thighs here, sew this all together separately, and then the next time I will probably just do all the clothes on her. Get all this fuzz out of the way. And you'll get to see the final steps for the wizard. Thank you guys ever so much for being here. I hope you have a great time. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Bye.